We are live, huh? Here on Thursday afternoon, April, what is this, 9th?
Yeah.
In 2026 in House Transportation, we're looking at miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, and we have witness on the line. I think Mike is with us somewhere, Mike Covey. We're looking at section 21. Further on our conversation earlier about the flotation devices, there was some testimony in the Senate related to this, and I think they made some changes from the original proposal when it first came out. But anyway, welcome to the committee. Thought we might see you in person, but I picked the wrong day, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately. Let me know if you have trouble hearing me, and I will shut my video off because I don't have the best connection.
There's just a little bit
For
of
the
a
record,
delay.
Mike Covey, executive.
Yeah, you might want to turn your video off. It's pausing and starting. Yeah, there we go.
Is that an improvement?
Yes.
For the record, Mike Covey, Executive Director, Vermont Traditions Coalition. I did testify on this in the Senate, and they have made some improvements to it. My concern was around hunting and bow fishing, as those can both be undertaken underway. And I still have some residual concerns about the depth of water. It's fine for a lot of activities. However, people will commonly chase ducks and geese in a canoe or other paddle craft where they can be in motion. So they'd be underway under their own power and also be actively hunting. And that might take place over deeper water. And when you're wearing a life preserver, it can affect the length of pull on your shotgun, make it more difficult to hit the target you're shooting at, more difficult to shoot in general. So I have some remaining concern. And I said in the Senate, this isn't a hill I'm going to die on based on the time frame that it encapsulates. But I think that it would be reasonable to at least modify the depth of water to like 6 feet. I think that's generally survivable, even in the worst of situations. And I think 3 feet is certainly quite cautious. And I understand the reason for the caution, and I understand the reason that this is being sought. But I think that, you know, a lot of times a person who is either bow fishing or duck hunting in a small bay or in a often in just a small swamp may never be in water over 5 or 6 feet, and it would alleviate that need to be wearing the life preserver at all times, which just inherently makes it more difficult to shoot accurately. So that would be my suggestion. It's certainly an improvement over what the Senate started with. They did improve the language. I think if we could adjust that depth, I'd be satisfied with it. It's not going to satisfy everybody, and I get that, but I also understand the very real scenario where this could save a life. And I flagged in the Senate that people drown year round. It's not unique to cold weather. It's not unique to cold water. It's always tragic. I think that to some degree, once we're adults, we need to be allowed our own autonomy, and that autonomy needs to be respected. I do think it odd that we only require the wearing of a life vest up to the age of 12, and I think up to the age of 18 would be reasonable, especially in the cold months. So those are my suggestions on the bill. It's fairly simplistic, fairly straightforward. I'd love to see that change to 6 feet of water. I think that's a reasonable depth to expect, and it would fit a lot of scenarios that are not currently captured by the 3-foot depth.
The 12-year-old versus 18-year-old, that is not referenced in this section, I guess.
It's not.
It's the other part of. Yeah, it is the. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. It was brought up in conversation in the Senate, and I was not aware of that and just found it interesting. But again, at 18 years old, we have all the responsibilities that come with the age of maturity, and therefore we should have the liberties as well.
Interesting. 12 years versus 18. We require it to 12, is what you're saying now, not to 18.
We require it to be worn up to 12. Yes. So we don't require it to be worn up to the age of 18. This bill would require it to be worn regardless in any vessel that's underway during from November 1st to May 1st, I believe it is. And I understand the reason for that. It's harder to react in cold water, but again, I think for the vast majority of people, 6 feet of water is a manageable depth to recover from. And I'm not insensitive to the tragedy that comes along with this. We had an incident in my town just a few years ago, and it was a goose hunter who headed out, and never made it back. So I understand that it happens. I also have heard a lot of pushback from duck hunters because it makes it difficult to do that paddling around type of hunting that a lot of people really enjoy. That's a type of duck hunting that's accessible to folks that may not be able to afford a motorboat.
Representative Wood?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Would you mind, could you just give me a little background on what Vermont Traditions Coalition is?
Certainly.
Thank
So
you.
our organization developed out of the Champion Lands deal back in 1999. And our foundational issues are land access, public land access, public land management, hunting, fishing, trapping, snowmobiling, trails, all the kind of things that connect Vermonters to the landscape. So those are the issues we advocate for.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Look, where's this? I guess that's I. One little island of water that's located water about 43 feet deep. I mean, I'm okay with 6'6", but that's the. I don't want to go any higher because that would be it for me. But does anybody else have any other questions?
I have duck hunted in a canoe, which the comment was going down Dead Creek was, well, don't worry if we tip over, you're going to get your gun wet, but you can stand in it, but it's muck. And so if you didn't have a life preserver on, you would start going down. So anyway, this is too technical for, I mean, I don't think the law should apply to any of what I'm talking about, but the point is there's 1,000 different odds and ends in here that may trip you up. But, this representative from Polteny says everybody wears a jacket when they're in her boat. We don't duck hunt. Sounds like a
But we never paddling. We ever do duck hunt here.
Welcome.
You had mentioned about the underway and open deck. Is that of any concerns?
So if you're underway in a motorboat, it wouldn't apply because you can't shoot from a motorboat for hunting purposes. You can bow fishing because it's considered fishing, but you wouldn't be able to. The boat has to come to a full stop from mechanical power prior to being able to hunt out of it if it's a motorized vehicle. So it really impacts canoes, kayaks, rowboats, and such. Because the law, you would cease to need to wear your life jacket the way the law is written once you are no longer underway. And so you would be underway by human power. In a canoe or a kayak, you would still be underway. But in a motorboat, you would no longer be able to be underway by mechanical power and be hunting at the same time, if that distinction makes sense.
Okay. Sounds like a moving car, right? You can't hunt
Exactly.
a moving vehicle.
Exactly.
Do they bow fish in multiple, is it a Lake Champlain only thing? Is there bowfish everywhere? Is that
Lake Champlain, the Connecticut River, and Lake Nymphomagog.
are the three places that there are bowfish or that happens?
That there is bow fishing, yeah. It primarily targets invasive and what are called cullfish. So Lake Champlain has a really bad problem with invasive tench. And they allow the bow fishing for bowfin and carp. In the Connecticut River, carp are the only species, and in Nymphomagog, I believe carp are the only species.
Is it? So bow, you mean bow and arrow then?
Correct. Yeah, bow and arrow with string attached.
Good
So
string.
you have a reel, you have a reel that spools out line, and you, in my experience, generally shoot about 100 to 150 times for each fish you hit because of refraction. They're never at, where you see them is not where they are. So, but it's enjoyed by a lot more people than you might anticipate.
I printed a lot of shirts for a lot of events of bow fishing. I was quite surprised. So, I've never been, but I printed shirts for people that design all kinds of funky bow fishing logo and artwork. It does that exist, and we have printed. They do seem to have events for it too, and competitions, and or maybe just get-togethers. I don't know. You probably certainly know that better than I, but I have definitely printed multiple bow fish designs before.
Yeah, and it has a functional purpose. It has a place. So, especially when when you find a bunch of tench, you spend time on trying to remove them because they are an invasive species.
Okay. Does anybody have any other? You worked with Senator Brennan, I guess, on the language piece in the Senate. He's a big sportsman.
I simply gave testimony, and the committee listened. My testimony wasn't quite as dialed down as it is here because it was clear they were going to make some changes. And so my testimony here today simply addresses what I could see as a reasonable modification to the changes they made.
Okay. Representative Thomason.
Thanks. Quick question. I wonder if you know, we heard this morning that there are similar laws on the books in most other states in New England. Do you know if they specify water depth in those laws? If not, we can ask the person who testified this morning.
I am unfamiliar with that. I could look it up,
Okay.
and I could respond to you and the chair on that.
It's okay. We can. I think the person who testified this morning probably has that information handy, so I don't want to add to your plate. But thanks.
It's a great question because I'm just curious whether it's addressed or not, and whether sometimes I wonder where these numbers come up with. Who decided 3 feet? Who decided 4 feet? Who decided 100 yards on the next building working on? Representative Pouch?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for your testimony. I appreciate your perspective. Is there an age limit? And I don't know it, for like duck hunting or whatnot, because if we go to 6 feet, as you suggest, that's assuming there's an adult and not a child. I know that, younger folks can hunt, but is there an age limit on when you can hunt by yourself?
There is not in the state of Vermont, but
Okay.
the practical reality of the matter is that everybody comes to that space where they're, where it fits for them at a different age, and
Yeah.
parents are deeply involved and the best judges
Sure.
of that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
The right number is. So, not somebody that goes duck hunting or bow hunting, bow fishing, or has even been out on Dead Creek or any of the other named places. How does this, if this law is passed, how does you view this interacting with the people that, at least in this part that you're commenting on, how does this interaction going to look out in the world, I guess? If there's, I don't even know when duck season is, or, how, you're looking at a fishing game, you fishing wildlife person coming up, having a discussion, or how do you see this playing out in the real world day to day with this law passed?
So state police do a lot of boat enforcement. So I think they would be enforcing it, but Fish and Game also enforces boater law. And that would be the enforcement mechanism. It would just be, checks on people on the water as they encountered them, or if they made a concerted patrol effort to say, hey, we're going to be working this bay today, or however that looks. To be frank, I think that a lot of people are going to do what they do regardless. I don't say that to be glib or say it lightly, but if somebody is skimming across the bay and they're just cruising across the bay, they're going to make their decision whether they're going to put the life jacket on for that or not. And I think that holds true. I mean, we see it every day with seatbelts. It's just the human condition. So I don't know what level of enforcement we will see. I think there will certainly be enforcement opportunities. And again, it helps me a lot to accept this because it starts November 1st and runs through April. And so the duck hunting season is largely impacted, and bow fishing season is not heavily impacted. It'll catch a few weeks realistically of bow fishing, but it would catch those few weeks. But duck season goose season starts in September and ends in January with some breaks throughout, and the duck seasons overlap and are shifted differently from that. But so essentially the fall. So you're going to be capturing waterfowl hunters from November 1st to mid-January, provided there's open water and there are geese around.
So, I guess I'll go. So you have these bays, I guess you're saying, where you see these duck lines, you see these boats, whatnot. How does the enforcement? Do they wait for hunters at the boat launch? Do the enforcement go out in a boat and kind of paddle up to you? What actually happens in any of the situation?
That is a great question for enforcement. My only experience with it has been when I was getting ready to put in. I've been approached by wardens several times when I was preparing to put in.
Okay.
But that doesn't preclude them from being able to go about it however they see fit.
Yeah, I'm just curious how the day-to-day interaction in an area I don't spend any time in. I don't gather from looking around anybody has a whole lot of experience with bow fishing or duck hunting on this committee.
Well, duck hunters, they catch them as they come out, because that's when you're going to have your game bag full of stuff, and you're going to know if your shotgun is paired correctly, because you can only shoot 3 times in a shotgun. Duck hunting, you can only have 3 charges in the gun.
All right, we got one that knows what's going on.
Claim that.
I didn't know if Representative Casey was gonna weigh in on any of these or not.
A vessel's a boat, right? When they talk vessel, they're talking about boat, they're not talking about snowmobile. So I guess I don't have much to add to anything other than I think most people don't like being told what to do. That's kind of like, that's what I don't like about it. It's like, it's my choice whether I want to wear a life preserver or not. I don't think it should be for somebody else to decide what I do, but I mean, I'll do what I do. I don't see people out there. Game warden's going to be probably tied up during deer season. So there's not a ton of game wardens. I can't imagine how this is going to ever get enforced. Then there's no fine mechanism. So, I think it should just be a suggestion that, hey, you ought to wear your life preserver. It's cold out there. And go at that.
All righty. I agree, but that doesn't mean that. I certainly agree, but that doesn't. Do you have any questions more for Mike in terms of hunters and activity? Representative Burke?
I was just gonna say, I think that 6 feet seems like too much if we're considering, the implications of what could happen if somebody fell out of a boat, like 6 feet. There might be some people who are 6'5" and they would be fine, but it just seems like 3 feet, maybe 4 feet would be.
The whole point about the muck.
And the mud, yeah, I mean, you could also get stuck in the mud too, you lose your boots.
I guess boots start filling up, you're in big trouble, what I hear. I don't know that. I don't have any personal experience, but I know.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate you joining us and, I appreciate the feedback and we'll be moving forward as we go through the sections and see where we're at. So.
Thank you.
If there's any more future conversation, we'll reach out. Appreciate it.
Invite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Life Council with us. Look at that, ahead of schedule. We're gonna move to where we left off on section. Well, we only have like 3 pages left, right? We are at section 28. We went through section. Oh, we did have a couple of, just since we're starting there and you're dialing in, I can talk while you're figuring out where you're at. Weren't there a couple of questions about this limited use vehicles? We just heard some testimony on it. And it is not clear about the 12 being 12 new ones each year. Weren't certain. We're looking for a little recommendation from you in the future on potentially making that a little more clear. Is that fair to say, committee? Did anybody agree that it wasn't entirely clear on the 12 new ones versus the 12 total?
It's a one-word addition, just the word additional after 12.
And there was, I don't know, I made a note on here somewhere. Representative Court, there was a kind of a question of specialty vehicles, antiques, and other things that might be treated differently in terms of their registration fee, their special rules, and I guess a division of some kind of side-by-side that showed.
Yeah, the antiques only drive one day a week or.
Yeah, the 1 day a week seemed a little bit, if you're gonna go to a show, it's hard to get there and back in 1 day. But
We just wondering if you do like a little chart of saying, all right, this is our criteria for this is how many days you're allowed to drive, this is what the registration, sort of like we can look at what.
All right, we make a note here. So,
Easier for me to sort of comprehend all the different special places like that.
it's a lot of words to describe a few different things versus perhaps if or not, we want to also not looking to put a swamp project on there, but we were interested in how many different exceptions like this out there? What are they?
Yeah, and the antiques, yeah, exposition.
Exposition,
Yeah.
and specialty vehicles, is that different or is that the same?
No, that's what I was wondering, yeah, like this stuff.
I think antique and exhibition vehicles are essentially the same thing.
Are they?
So
Vehicles treated differently?
Because we have one like for muscle cars, like a certain. year.
that's a street rod.
That's true. That's what I'm saying. These are the things.
Well,
So many.
of course, this is a street rod.
It's supposed to rest of.
That was, that was.
As opposed to a rod ski. Did he get a street rod in there, did he?
Street
Rod
rods,
ski?
do they have to stop at McDonald's?
Yeah,
every
I know.
time?
Yeah.
A&W.
I just confused with all the.
Oh, everybody went to the
That's
McDonald's.
the place. This is on drives.
Gosh.
Inside.
Go to Rocket J's and park your cars right now. Okay, section 28, I think we're at. If we're getting closer.
We are. Before we jump to that, though, I did just want to note, I think I heard a comment that there's no penalty for not wearing the life jacket. There is a penalty in that chapter, actually, for a violation. So that's something that's you should be aware of.
It's like $50.
It is. It's a $50 penalty. So let's see. That is 23 VSA 3317. $50 maximum penalty. A person who violates any of the following sections shall be subject to a penalty of not more than $50 for each violation, including Lights and equipment, which includes the life jackets, although D, let me just double check the. I think you are good here, but let me just double check. Yeah, this is under B, so this has a $50 penalty attached to it per violation.
And the new language, if it was taken up, would be for $50.
Yeah, so this cold weather life jacket requirement would have a $50 fine attached to it, maximum $50.
That's good to know, because I would say I felt like there was conversation thinking there was no
Oh, yeah, no.
penalty. I don't know if it changes or doesn't change, but the nature of the conversation.
Yeah.
I felt that there was no penalty. Right.
I wanted to make sure the committee was clear on that.
It's a good point. That's to point out there.
So another technical, see how this may or may not be moving if you're on a boat and get a fine. Is this a moving violation or subject to the surcharge?
That's a great question. Let's see. Yeah, so enforced by law enforcement officers. These are collected. Just double check the Judicial Bureau. So the surcharge comes from the Judicial Bureau statutes. So let me just see if they have jurisdiction over penalties related to vessels.
It's supposed to go $100. So
Oh,
that's 15% of the ticket.
ouch. That's what you're. You want to take that back for tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't see, I don't have a clear answer right now. It doesn't seem to be included, but I would want to just double check. One of the penalties in there is covered, which is the responsibility. It's under a different section, responsibility to follow orders of a law enforcement officer. But yeah, I don't see that these other fees and penalties are necessarily under that, but let me look into this more closely.
Alright. While you're making your notes, there was a question, we're still going to dig more into the inspections with testimony, but there was a question about whether making changes to the inspection on all these recommendations versus failures, does this change the liability on the inspection station and their employee? How's it going to, there has to be some level of experience on what the liabilities are for these fail, no fails. What is making these changes due to that liability to that inspection station or not? I don't know how that plays out, but that was a question for us to want to dig into or hear about.
I'll take a look. My initial sense is that the answer would be no, because the current manual has advise and fail provisions in there, but let me look closer at the existing manual and the case law just to make sure I'm not overlooking something.
That's great. We don't need it today. So, and the committee agreed to put a kit car, a Roth speed car on order for you to go with your.
Is that going to be part of my compensation? I'm not sure I can cover the income tax.
Representative Pouch had two at one time, but he got.
I mean, believe me, it's not that I'm not grateful.
All right. We're ready to go to unless I pull out more notes of things that I
Right.
to convey to you. But
I am, there you go as well.
Save yourself by going to section 28.
Here we go. All right. Section 28, this relates to display of license plates. So there are no changes to the number of plates. The changes up here are, I really dislike the lawyerly use of the word such. So this is a preference for me to change it to the. So the number plate, the vehicle. So until we get to page 35, where these are two new changes requested by the DMV. The first is that numbers and letters on plates shall not be colored, tinted, or changed in any manner from their appearance at the time the plate was issued. And then C is a person shall not cover or obscure any numbers or letters on a number plate with any material or substance. The existing law already provides that number plates shall be kept entirely unobscured, and the numbers and letters shall be plainly legible at all times. There were two things that motivated this language. The original language, the coloring, tinting, or changing, came out of apparently there are now shops that you can get your windows tinted at. They will also color your plate. So you can take your green Vermont plate and turn it black and white. They can turn the numbers pink for you. And the concerns that the DMV has is that when the plate gets colored like that, you can no longer tell which state issued it from a distance. You have to get up close to actually see the letters on it, which makes it hard for law enforcement to run plates if they're, trying to identify a vehicle. So and then C came out of discussion with the Senate Transportation Committee. There's concern about the current language can be read to leave a loophole for the clear but reflective covers for number plates that again make it difficult to read them except from a specific angle. So because the numbers and letters are still legible, but they're covered so that you couldn't read them unless you're at the right angle. Again, this is meant to make it so the license plates can be read. So this language would make it illegal to both get your license plate colored or tinted and also to have those clear plastic covers over the license plate.
Does this section C have any effect on Vermont strong license plate? We're allowed to cover them up. Does this do that?
You might want to just include an exception. I should double check that. I would be willing to bet that the language already provides an exemption, but if it doesn't,
Then I was just
I'll add it in.
undoing something that's allowed now.
I will add that to my notes. Because you're right, the Vermont strong plates are supposed to go over a regular number plate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many people do that, but to the extent that you do.
Yeah.
Is there Representative Keiser?
So in section C, it says with any material or substance, you think dirt would be a substance?
So we talked about that. And the existing language, the plate shall be kept entirely unobscured, already makes having your plate covered with snow or dirt illegal. So
Every snowstorm out there.
Yeah.
Every guy that's on a dirt
Yeah.
road is technically illegal until it rains.
yes,
So you get your rag and wipe it off.
Well, yeah.
so right, and it can happen while you're driving. There was brief discussion, and I know in other states the language is an individual shall not. Basically, an individual shall not obscure the numbers or letters on their license plate, and basically making it so that the individual's action shall not do it, but if it happens because of a snowstorm, the law is read to basically not permit it. And there's the way to word it, you'd have to say, you know, shall not either obscure or let permit another person to obscure or cover, etc. the license plates. You can't pay someone and get around the law. But you could reword the entire subdivision or add a caveat that says, you know, this does not apply to weather conditions that result in the plate being covered with snow or dirt, something like that. But that you might be getting a little too specific there. But yeah, there was discussion of how this language, technically when your plate gets covered with snow while you're driving down 89 in a snowstorm, you're no longer in compliance with the law.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, do we have a statute that makes it mandatory to clean your car off in snow?
No.
Can't remember. I know it's been discussed.
I've heard of.
Yeah, I am not aware of a provision. I'd have to look to be sure, but
It was talked about.
yeah.
I think I have an email from you last session that I,
Okay.
because I had a constituent ask about this and there were a lot of
Yeah.
about it.
We got into that a couple years ago.
Well, I don't know.
We don't have the.
Essentially, like, it was taken up in this committee before a few times.
We actually took it up because it was the issue of trucks.
Yeah,
I
the
remember
trucks.
this, and people were saying
Couldn't
they
do it with
couldn't
the truck.
climb up on the top of the
Yeah.
trucks to get it pulled out,
Yeah.
but the problem was that they were causing a lot of problems because the snow would blow off those big trucks on the people's windshields and create accidents. Yeah, but I don't think we did it about it.
Yeah.
Weather's changing, why are we even bothering about snow?
My way of thinking, C could be satisfied with a person shall not intentionally cover.
Or permit another person to cover. Yeah.
Damien, you were talking about concern that some of these shops will now color your license plate a different
That
color.
was where the original language came from.
So I'm not seeing, like, I'm seeing language about make sure the numbers and the letters are not obscured. But where's the language?
So the shall not cover,
Background.
well, yeah, it's numbers and letters.
The 20.
Yeah, it all relates to numbers and letters, the language. But it is, there was discussion too of the background, but for whatever reason, I don't remember,
Yeah.
I don't think there was ever a request to change the language. There was some discussion of sort of the examples of this. But that may be something you'd want to look into more, is should this say an individual shall not color, tint, change, cover, or otherwise obscure, you know, intentionally obscure any portion of their license plate. The one thing to note is that then there are the borders, which don't obscure anything necessary. So we'd have to write it. I believe there is a state that has a carve out for those, provided they don't cover anything that you need to read.
And did the Senate have testimony from like one of these shops that does this?
The testimony was from the DMV. I think the feeling, if I can summarize it downstairs, from what I could gather from the discussion in committee, was that this is consistent with the intent of the existing law, which was to make sure that you could read a license plate, and that law enforcement would be able to tell, like, this is a Vermont vehicle and not a vehicle from another state, or vice versa.
Do they give examples of a DMV of like if this is happening, or is it just speculation that it's happening in other states?
There, I don't know if there were Vermont examples. I do recall seeing, and I can't remember if this was my own research after they mentioned this or them, but I do remember seeing pictures of plates that had been altered. Yeah. The blacked out one was the one that stood out for me. I mean, it was striking, looked very classic, but it was a current license plate.
I know it's big in the
yeah.
city for the covering our license plate for the Easy Pass, because the
Mhm.
Easy Pass can't reach your license plate when you get that clear reflection.
Yeah,
It's legal.
Yep.
For that reason, you know.
yeah.
Well, when we get 22A. we're gonna need these.
I know, we need this law.
Yeah, I saw that. I pretended not to. I pretended not to see that, yes. It won't be able to follow the existing route if you want to call it an inter. We have to change it to an intra. Right, Damien?
Well, I have to go,
Am I wrong?
I go from Fairhaven to Hampton and back into Polk.
That is an inter route, but an intra,
Why?
but the current route is intra.
Yes, it is,
22A?
Yes.
it is intra,
Or it's
22A goes
Fairhaven.
into Hampton.
Oh, he wants to go all the way down to.
It does go.
right, but is it a
22?
different,
South of
is
Fort.
it a different route number
No,
in
it's
New York?
22A.
It's 22A in New York as well?
South of Route 4.
Interstate, interstate.
I'm not aware of any decent living south of Route 4 anyway, so. That section is taken, let's move on.
May I check
Okay.
on your doors with me?
So the next section here is the motor vehicles. So this would require that a motorcycle manufactured after basically from 1986 forward must be labeled in compliance with federal law and equipped with the muffler that meets the requirements of federal law. There was a question about aftermarket mufflers yesterday, I believe. My understanding is that some, but not all aftermarket mufflers will comply with these requirements. And so there are aftermarket mufflers that will not meet these requirements, but would be legal under current requirements. So it's not simply that it has to have a baffle. Each model motorcycle is certified with certain mufflers, and they have a matching stamp so that you can check compliance when it's manufactured. This essentially requires you to have a muffler that's certified as OEM equipment or equivalent for that motorcycle. So that is just something to note. And I'm not an expert on this, but that's my understanding, is that there are certain aftermarket mufflers that may still have baffles and so forth, but that wouldn't meet this requirement. But yeah, I can, if that's a ongoing concern for the committee, I will look into it more and get you a more certain answer. I looked into this last year, and I'm pretty sure I have notes somewhere on this. I just haven't had a chance to find them yet. Because this was in the motor vehicle noise S66 bill as well. And that is it.
Representative Phelps?
And my understanding in looking at this CFR regulation, I've looked at it before, the reason the EPA stamps it isn't really for emissions, it's really just for noise.
There is a noise.
That's the reason.
It cannot exceed a certain decibel level. And so you can still have a muffler that has certain sound deadening requirements, but it goes above that decibel level and it will not get the EPA stamp.
when you were driving it down, did you say that there would be mufflers that are on vehicles, on motorcycles now that would become illegal with this section? It's not a grandfather
So-
situation.
If the motorcycle's older than 1986, like if it was manufactured before 1986, then this wouldn't apply to it anyway. And then for motorcycles manufactured 1986 and newer, if they have their OEM, their original equipment muffler, or an original equipment equivalent replacement muffler, then they should meet that standard. The issue is if you've replaced the original muffler with an aftermarket muffler that doesn't have the correct stamp on it, so it's not certified to meet those noise requirements under federal law, then that would not comply with this. So there is a potential that you have a muffler that works for your bike, but it's not certified for your bike because for whatever combination with that engine, it doesn't meet the noise
And
requirements.
currently it would get inspected.
Currently, it would pass
the
inspection, but under this, it would
pass
fail.
This year, if this was effective July 1st of this year, then your inspection comes up next time, then it would no longer
Right?
pass, but you're not breaking the law today, I guess is what you're saying. You're
No.
past inspection today for that. So what, where was 1980, it was 1986, something mentioned in reference, something changed in 1986?
It's when they enacted the federal law,
That's when the,
or that's when the federal law that governs this took effect.
okay,
So basically, if you pre-exist the federal law, then you don't have to comply with these requirements. But if you're manufactured after the federal law took effect, you do.
Yeah, this is something I'm, I'd like to see us move forward with. Because it's a noise issue, it's really a noise problem. But I'm also feeling like if we were to move forward with this, we would provide some level of like a 1 year or, at your next inspection, it just becomes a warning that says, hey, by the way, they might not even know it, this doesn't pass. And you get, time to decide what you want to do. And if you go for an inspection the following time, it would then be, so the first time would be a warning, second time would be an expectation of compliance. Because I think it would be unfair for somebody to pull in, with a motorcycle maybe they bought, and not even be aware of it.
Okay. Questions, comments from anyone? It's questions mostly.
I would just wonder how that would work. So you give a warning, would that go in the AVIT system? So if they go to the dealership,
Yeah.
now a different one, but they know, yeah.
Well, I would assume it would be on there as what we have already heard, there's gonna be some advisory.
Yeah.
Things that are, the assumption is it would be on the record.
Yeah.
So when we ask the DMV that's listening out in the ether, how this could be implemented and whatnot, when they come to testify in this section, they probably be able to answer that question for us when they get here, I think, right? But since they do tend to, somewhere out there, they're listening. Representative Gacy?
Where's the CPA tag on the mufflers? Anybody know?
I can pull up a picture of it if you want. So
It's embossed on the.
Yeah.
But they're not talking about super quiet.
no, I can.
It says here. 1996, 80 decibels. I don't know, from some
I don't know what 80
distance.
Yeah, and they don't have to do a test to ensure compliance. This is it's simply, it either has the correct stamp or it doesn't. So,
Somebody could take their stamp off their old mufflers and stamp it on their new
Is
ones.
it actually in the metal or is it the stamp?
yeah, so. Yeah, the federal requirement is at the time of manufacture, there shall be a permanent legible label or mark containing information for all exhaust systems or exhaust system components that are sold. And they shall be affixed in a manner that they cannot be removed without destroying or defacing them. It must not be applied to any part that is easily detached from the product. So it's a pretty permanent mark. So let's see if this is. Yeah, I'll see if I can find you a picture of the stamp here.
I have to find somebody to give some examples of what it looks like and how it works in the day to day. I think that we have a witness. It's going to come in and talk about what actually, how the inspection works and what it looks like. And
Should bring some bikers in and see what they think.
I have been in touch with Harley Davidson and locally. Wilkins dealership is on the list of witnesses who does bike inspection and sells, and so help us see what this part is amongst whomever else, but we haven't heard from the DMV on it yet either. But I agree.
So
Also, any idea how many we're talking about here at all?
yeah, so here's an example.
Pipes, I'm not really looking, I don't really want to go back to my stock ones.
Yeah, here's an
They're
example
loud though.
of the stamp that is on, this is a Honda exhaust system. So meets EPA noise emissions requirements, 80 decibels for the Honda model BB 1000. Installation on motorcycles not specified may violate federal law. And so this is the stamp you would see on the pipe. In this case, it's right in the metal of the pipe itself. And then there's a corresponding model stamp on the vehicle that will correspond to this model number here, so that you can match them up, even if you don't know, if you're not familiar with the particular model.
The inspection station is.
Yeah, I mean, the instance here is, if it's a less common model of motorcycle sold in the US that the inspection mechanic hasn't seen before, they're able to match. There's a stamp on the bike itself that has information on the model, and then on the muffler, there's this information that tells you the model that it's certified for, and you can match the two of them up. And that's, with this language here, the idea is that that's how compliance would be done. The questions for all of you are whether this is, whether this makes sense, whether the enforcement is doable, whether this is something you want to be done through inspections, et cetera. So, but the proposal here is that it would be enforced at inspection with a failing inspection if your muffler on the bike doesn't have that certification.
Is that the case?
So somebody could, I'm not gonna do this, but I'm just saying somebody could, and kids do this, but I could go get my bike inspected with stock mufflers, right? Get inspected, go home, take my Allen wrench, 2 Allen wrench screws on each side of the pipe, and just slide the baffle out.
Yeah. When the Senate took testimony on S66, there was discussion of the potential for a mechanically inclined individuals to change out their exhaust. Same with an unrestricted exhaust on a regular car. So I think with all of this, there's that question with inspection.
Guys spend a lot of money on exhausts and headers and stuff, and probably won't be too awful happy that they have to get rid of them forever. Mine aren't that loud. If you roll right on them real hard, it'll make some noise, but I don't roll on it that hard. But I know some friends that do, and they got some pretty expensive exhausts. Maybe they comply, maybe they don't, but they might not might not take too kindly to it, but.
So, Jamie, in the description of it, may or may not conform. It's in compliance now, it passes inspection, there's no muffler requirement then, I think, on the motorcycle today.
Not for noise. There isn't a requirement that you have one of these EPA noise compliant mufflers. You do have to have a working exhaust system and so forth that meets, it's probably a visual emissions inspection. I'm not sure how the inspection manual addresses motorcycle exhaust, but this would be a new requirement in the inspection manual for them to look for an exhaust that specifically is designed to limit the noise.
Did the DMV testify on this section?
I do not recall DMV testimony. I may have missed.
We're gonna hear from them, right? So, okay, we're gonna hear from that, and we're gonna hear from others, see where we go. But we at least understand what it says.
I mean, I think, we've talked to motorcycle people, but there are also people who are, willing to testify about meals too. So, there's two sides to it.
I bet you there's 10. But for what we're doing today, there's questions on the particular language and on what it may or may not mean, and then we will line up and hear from this, much as we're going to hear from inspections potentially, and any other section that we talked about earlier about people have questions or ideas about who else should testify in other section. We're going to move into the inspection piece, this piece, and I'll go back to my notes about whatever else we need to make sure that we line up from here forward. Tomorrow morning, I don't know what the estimate for floor is, but Representative Southworth has some language on one of the sections he'd like us to consider. So you should get an email on it if you didn't already. I'm not sure. And many of my emails is fully yet. And you may pick up another section or another witness tomorrow. We may not. But that's current scoop. Anything else? Thank you for coming back in and getting us to the end of the DMV bill, and then we'll start getting more testimony on sections. Thank you very much. We're adjourned for this afternoon.